This is the Letters in Black and White series of the Dissidents Podcast. The following is the fourth in a series of podcast conversations with interesting people on the topic of race in America. Today's guest is Mary Burkey Owens, a prominent attorney in Chesterfield County, Virginia. When they were young, Mary and Wink were classmates at Thomas Dale High School, class of 1979, in Chester, Virginia. Wink served as president of student council, and Mary was a senior class treasurer. Welcome to a class reunion and memories of race in the New South in the 1970s.
And we have with us Mary Owens today, which is awesome because Mary, we're going to hear a lot from Mary, but she is your friend from Thomas Dale High School.
I remember Mary as Mary Burkey before Mary Burkey Owens.
That's right.
That's right.
And she makes it, Mary, I don't know if you know this, you make it into her book.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why. So this is kind of what's fun is, so here's the background. Wink, I went to a diversity training class in Austin, Texas, and I wrote about it because to me, it made me feel more separated from people, no matter the color of their skin. It just made me feel more separated. So I wrote about it. Wink responded. And we wrote together for a while and a book came out. But what we really wrote about was so much more than race. It was just about friendship and relationship and America. And Wink, you asked me, this is kind of funny, Mary. Wink asked me before we got on this podcast, what is like a pithy statement that describes why we do what we do? And Wink, I don't know if you have that pithy statement. I've been thinking about this. Okay. I've been thinking about it. Maybe you should go first because I've been thinking about this. I have a statement. I don't know if it's what you meant, but you go first and tell me what your pithy statement for why we do what we do is.
No problem. Here's my statement. So I'm a small town kid from Chester, Virginia. And on April 21st, 2018, my daughter said to me dramatically, Blackness is oppression. Nothing else matters. And I just thought how strange and different that was from my experience growing up. And so that is why I do what we do, is to show that there's a lot more to the world, both today in 2022 and back in the old days, in the 1970s, then Blackness is oppression, nothing else matters. In fact, I want to lead into this discussion by mentioning something to Mary, and she'll appreciate this. You know, despite all the troubles in the world, I love life and I love the world. I love the nuance and complexity in the world. I love how nothing's ever black and white, if you think about it. Things are really shades of gray when you get right down to it. I loved my years at Thomas Dale High School from 1976 to 1979 in Chester, Virginia. Go Knights. I have been to places a small town kid from Chester could only dream about. The Top of the Hub restaurant in Boston at nighttime, a classroom in Langdale Hall at Harvard Law School, a high-rise apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, the Harvard Club of New York, the Plaza Hotel on Central Park South, the floor of the US House of Representatives, the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, Sausalito, Big Sur, Malibu, the wide beaches of Coronado at night when the moonlight dances on the ocean waves. And through it all, Mary, through it all, and much more, I felt most alive at Thomas Dale when we were young. And that's kind of my entry into today's podcast.
That's wonderful, Wink. Just wonderful thoughts. I
put Mary on the spot.
I will say that I think Thomas Dale was great. I think that we lived in a wonderful little small town in Virginia, and we lived our life, and I think we lived it with part-time jobs and dreams and hopes and wishes and feeling safe and comfortable with our classmates and secure. We were the last class that Mr. Crump was our principal.
Yes.
And
Jay Wilson.
yeah, it was great because I just think back to classes we had together. Of course, your hair wasn't gray then.
Mary.
And it was a little tiny bit bigger wink. It was a little bigger.
It was, that's true.
But I was looking at my yearbooks.
Me too, last night.
I was too. And I actually read what you wrote in my yearbook. And it was really cute.
What did I write? I hope it was good. Okay.
Well, your handwriting was a little poor, but
Oh,
what
okay,
you
all
wrote
right.
was cute. But it just reminded me of just what happy times we had. And
Yeah.
I just think back and don't remember. And you and I talked about this a little bit on email that
Yeah.
I don't remember ever worrying about things happening when we were
None.
at Thomas Dale, whether it was race or crime or I don't know, even drugs, although we know there were drugs. You know, we had kids and everybody did what they wanted to do, what group they wanted to hang with. And you and I were probably the National Honor Society.
Yeah.
kind of
We were
nerdy
the
kids.
nerdy kids. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and we were in SCA.
Go
we were
nerds.
class officers and things like that. And but we had dreams.
Treasurer. I've seen your
Yes.
class.
Yes. But you know, I'm so proud of watching where you went. I know you went to UVA. And
I know. I apologize.
And that's okay. I mean,
Mary's
hey,
a
I got
Hokie, by
in
the way.
UVA, but I felt like I was too poor to go to UVA. But you know, all of us just enjoyed being friends and good natured,
Yeah.
ribbing each other. And
Oh, yeah.
so I think it's great to see where our classmates have gone. What's sad for me is our classmates we've lost. And you didn't come back for some of the reunions we've had. I've been to some of them, but the last one was really sad because we read the names of those we'd lost. And, you know, we had some great people, Penny and Catherine, that we lost, but the rest of us have gone on and lived, and I stay in touch with lots of folks. And
Oh, good. Good.
you've been very successful going to Harvard Law School, and I just went to the University of Richmond. But
great school, by the way. Love that school.
it was great. But you've made great strides and moved across the U.S., and I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I'll tell you something, Mary. I sometimes wonder, what did I miss in moving away so far from home, right? I mean, there's certainly an allure and appeal of big name places and big name things and big name people. But I just wonder, are there certain things I may have missed not having made my life and career in Chester? I wonder sometimes.
You know, that's an interesting question because I never thought I'd go far away, and I didn't. I lived right here, but my brothers did. And it's funny because I just was with a classmate last week, a guy that was 2 years ahead of us that I used to date at Thomas Dale. And I was doing some work for his family, some legal work. And I could sense that he almost felt like he had one foot still here, but one foot in California where he lives. So I think it's interesting that you say that because I do think that it was such a charming life we had.
Yes.
And for me to still be here, I still go to the same church that I was baptized in and married in and have a plot where I'll be buried. So
Jen, that's the life I knew.
It's about roots for me and a level of comfort and security. But then I think about like your opening, all the adventures you've been on. I love to travel. I've been all over the world.
Yeah.
But I like to come home. I like
home
to
is
drive
always
through
Chester.
Chester. Yeah. I mean, Chester's it's 4 lanes now, but Thomas Dale's still there. And
yes.
Every time I pass Thomas Dale, I just have great memories.
Yes. Well, Jen, hopefully we
Yeah.
can make Thomasdale High School world famous in our book.
We just may. And but on Thomasdale, I wanted to ask you, Wink. Part of what we write about in our book is Wink often refers back to his time in Chester, and he was one of the first people who was in a integrated school, and his experiences with that, and how despite all that, or because of all that, I guess even perhaps, Chester and Thomasdale, he feels more at home, more aligned with the values that he saw play out at that time in his life than what he sees now. And he mentioned to you, Mary, that his daughter said, Blackness is oppression, nothing else matters. And we write often about this, where he's, he feels like he didn't even see that. That wasn't even a part of his life. Yeah. Back in the 70s in a small Southern town. So before we get any further, Wink, my question is to you. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what your life was like then, and why you think maybe everything was okay? Like, what's different?
I'm going, and we talk about this in the book, Jen, but I'm going to set the stage. And Mary already may know this from having taken a look at the manuscript, but setting the stage for high school, I was a serious man on a mission. I went to Salem Church Junior High School, but let's go back a year or two before that. In the 4th grade, one day, I was waiting to see my doctor, Dr. Lush, and he had a family practice in Southside Richmond off of Hull Street. And I thought to myself, I think I would like to be president of the United States one day. And so, and I was in 4th grade, Mary, 4th grade. And I thought, well, okay, so if I'm going to do that, I have to be vice president before that. And before that, I should be a senator from Virginia. So while waiting for the doctor, I reverse engineered a pathway that would take me to the White House one day. And that included becoming student council president at Thomasdale High School, vice president, student council, homeroom delegate, governor at Salem Church Junior High School, and on down the road. And so I remember by the time I was ready to see the doctor, I had an 8-year plan in my little 4th grade mind. And so that plan kind of drove me throughout junior high school. And, I had no time for race. I was on a mission. And I remember when I ran for governor at Salem Church Junior High School, I was on a bus ride home. And some kid said, and I shared with the kid that my plan was to become a governor of Salem Church. And he said, who ever heard of a Black kid becoming governor? And I could have paid him any mind. He could have pounded sand. It was irrelevant to my self-divine plan for myself. So I became governor. And so by the time I entered high school, I was clearly a man on a mission. I had wonderful self-confidence and ambition reinforced in junior high school. And I was going to conquer the world, well, at least conquer student council at Thomasdale High School. And that was kind of my mindset. So race just was not on the radar screen for me as I entered high school. It just was not. I would be lying if I said it was. And I think that might come across as very strange today in the year 2022 at Thomasdale High School. What are your thoughts on that, Mary? Am I a dinosaur? Am I a fossil from another time?
No, Wink, and I would have voted for you for president if you'd run, and you would have been a great president. You still got time. I mean, you're very young compared to our last 2 presidents. So, no, I think you're right. I don't think we looked at race. We had, we had smart kids, we had athletes. Yeah. I don't think we looked at each other with color. I don't think we looked and said, oh, he's Asian, he's Black, she's white. I don't think we did. Right. We were just at high school having a great time and trying. I think it was the top of the world for us those 3 years.
I do.
I really do.
Yeah.
And I read in my yearbook the comments people wrote, and You know, you were always at a big personality. I was kind of shy in high school, which
You
is funny because
were,
I'm not shy now.
but that was endearing, Mary. That was endearing.
Well, I'm not shy anymore. I think after being a
Uh-oh.
trial lawyer for 35 years, you can't be shy. But you always, I can remember you had a big personality. You weren't shy.
Yeah.
And yeah, but we loved you because you were funny and smart and
There you go.
quirky. You were a little quirky funny.
I
you
was.
know?
You bet.
And,
And I
but
loved it.
it's hard for me to talk about race simply because I don't remember ever thinking about
Yeah.
it. I don't remember walking past anybody and
Yep.
identifying them as Black or feeling scared or walking past any Asian students
Yep.
and
Yep.
feeling like they were not the same as me. I felt like
And
we were all the same.
And I think this is such an untold story, Mary. I mean, I think in some ways we were the greatest generation when it came to race. And I say that, Mary, because our parents and grandparents and back in time, there were centuries of social isolation in the county based upon racial lines, right? Racial segregation, whatever. We were the first generation that would graduate from high school without that. We were the first generation that came to know each other as people. We came to have a united sense of this is our school, as opposed to this is a Black school or a white school. It was just, this is our school. And so I think that we really, like people sometimes say the GI generation was the greatest generation because they won World War II. Well, maybe we were the greatest generation because we put to bed the idea of racial isolation. That's what I think. I mean, where are our novels and plays and books and movies about the greatest generation in the 1970s? You know, we don't see that. It's a shame. I think it's a shame.
I do too. I mean, I think we had great music.
Yes.
Remember, I mean, we had just fantastic music at our school dances. We were all together.
Yes.
And nobody ever commented, oh, you know, the band's playing Black music or white music, or we all just went and had a good time. And
yeah,
I just think we were so lucky, Wink, because I just think maybe we were at the peak of things being wonderful. And then the years that came later, I think the 80s were pretty good, but seems like people have become almost obsessed with our differences instead of what we have in common, which is that we're all people. And you're right. We were just kids at Thomasdale High School, loving life.
Loving life. Let me give you some great examples of what you just said, Mary. I collected from my yearbook some student expressions of appreciation. And keep in mind, these are from the 1970s. All right, so one said, Winkfield, I must truthfully say that my senior year has been more interesting by our discussions. Though we seldom agree, I will always respect your opinions. Best of luck at UVA and God bless, Lori. That's a wonderful ethos. You can disagree, but not be disagreeable. We live by that, I think. Yeah, here's another one. Wink, since I am no longer with this public, you may know this person, Mary, so okay. Wait, since I am no longer with this publication, I must sign on the outskirts of this picture. I am shamed. Wink, you're a pig-faced liberal and a Democrat. We're nonpartisan on this podcast, I would say that. You're fun to fight with and a very nice guy. Best of luck with everything you try. I know with your winning wit and charm, you'll always come out ahead. Your friend, Sharon Fitzgerald, a senior at last, thank God. See you in 5 years. So that was Sharon. And then my best friend, and this is why I live my life in a way that doesn't respect race when it comes to friendships, my best friend, Terry Nicholson. Do you remember Terry?
Oh, he was so sweet. Such a nice guy.
Yes. Terry said to Winkfield, I've known you since the 6th grade, and all that time, a friendship has grown that will last forever. I wish for you the best of luck in all that you do, and I know that you will always be a success. When I'm a humble multimillionaire, I'll be looking for your name on the front pages. Best of luck, Wink, Terry Nicholson. And you know, it was Terry that gave me the nickname Wink in the 6th grade, and it stuck.
I didn't know that.
Terry, it was Terry. Yeah.
So you were Winkfield up until 6th grade?
Until I met Terry.
I knew you as Wink.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
Well, it's funny, Wink. I did, if you looked at our senior yearbook, the picture of the class officers, and I think Beth's missing, but it's Marva, Scott, and me.
Marva
And-
Felder. Yes.
And that picture never evoked in my mind anything other than we were like portraying ourselves as some old Southern family, the three of us. Not, and I
Right,
wonder
right,
now if
right.
it bothers Marva because it was never intention to be
Oh.
anything other than just we were dressing up and trying to look stern and
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wondered if you ever looked at that and thought about that.
It's so funny, Mary. When I look at that picture, I think by the skin of my teeth, I vanquished my opponent because I defeated Marva in this 3 election for president. but you know what? I think in that time, we thought of ourselves as Southerners, and we thought of ourselves as Southerners in a positive way. Or the prom, for example, what was the theme? The Old South or Springtime in Mississippi or something? I don't think anyone was self-conscious about that. It was just that we had a sense of the best elements of the past. And I think, Mary, that's one of the things I've noticed in my life as I've gone from Chester. I'm going to try to put this in a good way, but to embrace with joy and pride your Southern past, I think sometimes doesn't fit as easily in the larger Black culture as like in consciousness. Does that make sense? I mean, to be honest, let's talk, Mary. To be honest, Chesterfield County is like many Southern jurisdictions. And so there are many things in our past that reflect a conflicted past. When we were growing up, you just accepted that as just part of life. There was no desire to try to repeal or tear down elements from the past. You just sort of incorporated the best of the past into your sense of self. But I have sometimes found that sense of pride in genuine Southern roots doesn't always fit comfortably within the more national Black culture and consciousness. And I think that's one of the reasons why my lovely wife and I are sometimes misaligned when it comes to race, Mary, because she grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a different milieu, if we will, a different ethos, an ethos of Black sororities, Black fraternities, our kind of people, Black summer homes, you name it. And that just wasn't, I'm a little country kid, Mary, who grew up close to Fort Darling, Drury's Bluff, so just a different ethos. And I sometimes don't think people in the national scheme appreciate how nuanced and complex it can be within Black families to embrace your genuine roots if they're Southern roots, when other members of the family may have roots in more urban settings. That's been one of my realizations as I've grown older, Mary. I often wonder, and I mentioned this in the book, Mary, I often wonder if my dating choices had been different in high school, where might I have turned out?
Well, it sounds like you did fine.
I think so.
But it is funny you say all that, Wink, because I think it's true. I mean, look, my parents are from Appomattox. We went to surrender grounds my whole life, studied Civil War history.
Yeah.
But I can sit here and tell you, we never looked at it, went to grounds thinking in terms of the South fought to protect slavery.
Yeah.
I understand things a lot better now, but at the same time, you were right, it was Southern pride.
Right.
It was really just, we fought a battle and it was over states' rights, and we seceded from the Union. And I've learned a lot as an adult, but at the same time, it's part of our history, and we can only look back and know that things that were done were wrong. But at the same time, we can't ignore them. We can't pretend they didn't happen. We can't blame,
Yeah.
me because my family's from Appomattox for what happened,
Exactly.
170 years ago. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that there is, maybe people need something to have I don't know if it's a fight they want, or they want to feel vindicated for things. And it's just sad. Sometimes I think there is sort of a hole in people, and sometimes they try to fill it with the right thing, and sometimes they try to fill it with the wrong thing. And that's not to say bad things haven't happened, but
Sure.
history was history, and Virginia history, it's a Virginia history. There's not a darn thing
Right.
any of us can do
Right.
about what happened in the 16, 17, 1800s
Right.
and
Exactly.
1900s before 1961, unless
Yeah.
you were born in 60. But
Right.
I do feel that there has been a lot of change in the way people view what happened in our country, and mistakenly believe that we revere perhaps choices people made 175 years ago that we didn't have anything to do with it, and we
Right.
don't revere it. We just know
Right.
it was there, and we
Yeah.
move on, and it didn't affect us. It
Yeah.
just never affected us in Chester when we were
Yeah.
kids.
Such wisdom, such wisdom. I was telling Jen, I think in some ways we had a wisdom in our generation that's been lost, right? Because if you think about it, we were closer to the bad old days of slavery and Jim Crow than young people are today. So logically, you should have seen more disaffection and alienation and discontent in the 70s in a small town, no less, southern small town, but you didn't see that. It's odd that you see more of that in the 2020s. It's very strange to me.
Why is that, do you think, Wink? I mean, really, why?
Really, why? Do you want an answer, Mary? I think the problem is
intellectually, I really want an answer.
We don't have enough J. Wilson Crumps out there. We don't have enough principles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about J. Wilson.
Wink, just
Crump,
to repeat
sing his praises. He was our principal.
Yeah, for our audience, I want to repeat that he was the principal that you were.
That's right.
Were at.
That's right.
Yeah.
So he was our principal at Thomasdale High School when we were there, and he had been principal, I think, for 25 years, Mary, something like that. And
I think forever.
Forever. That's right. That's right. And he had a responsibility to oversee the merging of different student populations, because George Washington Carver High School used to be the only segregated Black high school in the county. So when that school closed in 1970, many of those students went to Thomasdale High School and integrated Thomasdale, which is formerly all white. So Principal Crump had to administer and bring together people from different backgrounds who have had every reason to be suspicious and distrustful of one another. And I think through his vision and leadership, one didn't see the major differences that one saw in other localities, like say South Boston or Prince Edward County of Virginia, when you had schools desegregated. One of the things that Principal Trump really should be noted for is there were a few hardcore bigots in the county who didn't like the idea of desegregation of schools in the late 1970s, early 1970s. Late 1960s, early 1970s. So they formed two segregationist white academies, Tomahawk Academy and Bermuda Academy. Did those ring a bell, Mary? They may or may not. They were like two all-white academies formed in some parts of the county, one in Bermuda, 100, one in Midlothian. I can tell by your expression, you don't really recall.
I remember Gill School. Okay. Remember Gill School? I do remember Gill School.
Gotcha. Well, these two academies, they were trying to feed upon prejudice and fears and bias about people. And Principal Trump bitterly opposed their creation and their maintenance and any sort of support from them. And as a result, Thomasdale High School grew stronger through the 1970s under Trump's vision and leadership. And those two segregationist academies withered away and died due to lack of support. And I would praise Principal Trump for his leadership in shepherding Thomasdale High School through the 70s against those pressures to conform with white segregationist interests. So, but the thing is, where are the Principal Crumps today? I don't know. So I
don't know either. Do you remember him getting on the loudspeaker in the morning?
Yes.
He said, I'm tired of all this hugging and kissing in the hallways. And he gave us a little lecture on behavior in the hallways. I'm sorry you weren't there, Jen, because you would think it was funny.
Well, Mary, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because Wink sent me something the other day about a new policy at Thomasdale High School. Wink, do you want to talk about that and how different it is from what you just discussed?
Yeah. And so, Mary, you may or may not be aware of this. I think there was like a Principal Christopher Jones at Thomasdale High, maybe a year or two ago. And Principal Jones created a quote unquote affinity groups just for white students in the interest of anti-racism. And it occurred to me in the year 2021, and it occurred to me, would Principal Crump have taken such an action
No.
in 1977? You're laughing.
No.
Why are you laughing, Mary? Tell
He
me.
shook his head and he just said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. We're not doing that. We're not going to waste money and time doing that. Don't you think, Wink? I mean,
yes, I do.
And we would have just said,
And I think
okay, we didn't know, and moved on.
This is true. So yeah, I don't know. I think in some ways, we've grown more dense about these matters. We had more wisdom in the past. At least that's my thinking. But Mary, I wonder, Mary, will our children's children grow tired of these kind of strange ways of understanding the world? Will they look back and long for the stories their grandparents tell of days from the 1970s? Do you think there'll be like a cycle?
Wink,
in other words, of how we understand the world and race.
And you cut off, so I'm sorry. I thought you finished. I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
I do think people will tire of it. I think people have tired of sort of what happened to a certain extent the last couple of years. I think a lot of people made good points and a lot of good happened from that, but there were a lot of knee-jerk reactions to the whole Black Lives Matter movement, some of which will possibly have good in the future and some won't. But I do think people will remember going out to church and going to lunch after church on Sunday and going to the football games on Friday night and the parades that went through Chester and watching the kids play basketball and, going to the Thomasdale plays and just all the things that it just seems like everything was happier to me. And I don't know if we're sugarcoating it or it really was happier, but I don't remember kids being depressed like they are now. I mean, somebody might break up with us or our hair looked bad or we couldn't afford a pretty dress for a dance, but it just seems like everything is heavier now to me, Wink.
Now, I'm going to agree with you, Mary, and raise a question. But first, I want to give a caveat. There was, as you recall, smoking in the girls' bathroom and those fires that happened mysteriously. But that's not of the same level as what we're talking about. And that may have been a prank, for what I can tell. But in terms of what you're getting at, so what is social media doing to us? Like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Tumblr, Instagram. Are they part of the problem, you think?
Absolutely, Wink. I think everything is instantaneous now, and it's all in your face now. And you can't get away from it. Everything. People post pictures of what they ate for breakfast and where they're going and TikTok, people want to be TikTok artists, and no longer do you have a sort of small goal, like you had your fourth grade goal of what you wanted to do, and you work that goal. Now
Right.
people's goals are, if I can't get it done in the next week or two or 3, then I'm not interested. So
Yeah.
I do think there's just this, no one has patience to think about things and make good decisions and move forward. And I can tell you from doing court litigation
Right.
and being a substitute judge, you can't imagine the stuff people post on social media that without thinking. It's like it gives them a license to not use their brain, to think about the long-term consequences. And I guess that's why I keep talking about your fourth grade dream, because you had long-term dreams and goals.
Yeah.
And I don't think people,
them.
they don't do that anymore. They just want to grow up, be rich. They want to be a sports star.
Yeah.
They don't have really dreams that would make our country a better place anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a shame. One thing that I noticed when I read my expressions, my student appreciation notes, it seemed like we could disagree without being disagreeable back in the old days. Like, it was clear to me that I had vigorous discussions with my classmates, but it was accepted. It was just like, okay, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. All right, call it a day. Jenna and I have had a recent experience with someone who we refer to lovingly, affectionately as Klingon. I had expressed my mild, modest opinion, Mary, it was very modest, that Harvard University should not be so concerned about reparations for American slavery because, heck, my grandmother was born in 1897 and she had moved on from slavery. So why should Harvard University in the year 2022 be having symposiums and virtual talks about such a thing? And this gentleman, I sent him like a light paragraph expressing my opinion, like I might express my opinion to Walter Blockkamp or Terry Nicholson in the old days, right? And I was expecting a paragraph in return. Mary, the guy sent me 36 paragraphs in rebuttal to my light one paragraph opinion, 36, and he wouldn't let go. And so Jen and I just had a delightful time analyzing that hyper response in the current public discourse. But like I said, at Thomasdale, when we went to school, I could have expressed any opinion. This is an opinion. I might have gotten a response, but I would not have gotten a 36 paragraph response to a 1 paragraph opinion. That's just, yeah. So I don't know.
And you did have opinions, Wink. I remember that hand shooting up. And
Yes. I'm excited.
And you always were very intelligent and thoughtful. And
thank you.
I can remember sometimes going like, here goes Wink again. But,
yes,
it was a good thing. It was a loving, here goes Wink again. And, I'm going out to dinner with Bev. You remember Bev going and
Yes. Tell Bev I said hi. Yeah.
I will. I'm going out to dinner with them Monday, and I can't wait to tell them about seeing you and our discussions.
Sure.
But I know they'll both just laugh and go, oh yeah, what's Wink like now? And I'll have to say he's exactly the same, except his hair is gray and short, but I bet he's still tall and skinny.
Tall, maybe not so much skinny, but.
Well, none of us are as skinny as we used to be, but we really did luck out.
Oh yeah, it was great. I remember I would wake up, Mary, this is true. I would wake up every morning with the goal of asking the most questions in every class if I could. That was my goal. And sometimes I think kids don't do that nowadays because they're too afraid of provoking some response to their opinions. I think it's sad because you learn by asking questions, right? At least I did.
I think you're right, Wink. And I also think that people are so dogged about their own opinions that they don't want to ask someone else's opinion if it's divergent, because they don't want to justify or come off their own opinion. They want to think they're right, be right, and can't entertain the idea that someone else is right. Yet our discussions, even in class, they were intelligent, they were kind. You know, we may have laughed about things with each other, but we weren't ever rude or unkind or nasty to each other. We had strong opinions, perhaps. You more so than a lot of people, but I think we respected that.
But I think nowadays, you know, there's so many things that have changed. But now we walk on eggshells because we've elevated this idea, or we've reified, if you will, in this idea of race. And it's so interesting to hear you guys speak, particularly because you grew up in the South. And so and I grew up in the South too. So by the way, I don't have a right to speak as a Northerner, but you hear from people who are from the North, and they just really, many, I don't want to stereotype, but many look down on the South as this kind of backwards place. And yet what I'm hearing from you guys is in your little Chesterfield County, you know, school, that things were more normal. I think that in so many ways we've overplayed race to the fact that we've made it an issue more so than it ever was back in the 70s when you were going to school. I mean, would you agree? Am I reading that right? Would you add to that?
Well, I think when we were in school in the 70s, all of our authority figures, teachers, administrators, Principal Crump, I think they had a sense that the world was changing, and the world was changing in a positive direction in terms of eliminating social isolation. No longer Black schools, no longer white schools, there were schools. The famous Green versus New Kent County case, which I'm sure Mary's aware of, which came down in 1968 from the US Supreme Court. So I think because of that ethos we received from authority figures, emphasizing the person and the individual was more aligned with that ethos than assuming every person was an avatar for a racial group. That's the way I kind of look at it. And so today, I don't think there's that same ethos among authority figures because, you know, quite frankly, they don't have they don't have centuries of Jim Crow behind their back as Principal Crump did in the 1970s. I mean, they actually are living in the blessed times our grandparents dreamed of, right? I wrote about that in my honors thesis at UVA, is that in the class of 1983, at a school like Lloyd C. Burke High School, which is in the northern part of Chesterfield County off of the courthouse, you had kids, Black kids, in a 10% Black school overachieving in all kinds of activities. The student council president, most friendliness, different associations. I think the homecoming queen may have been Black. You just had over-representation because all of the Black kids and the white kids, they had never known a day when schools were Black and white. They'd only known Lloyd C. Byrd High School. They'd only known Salem Church Junior High School. And I think that was a beautiful moment in our county and in our time. And I think as we get older, people who remember those beautiful times of racial wisdom need to make sure we speak up, because the day may come when we are gone and no one will be left to remember the days when the walls of segregation in schools came tumbling down and when a new world was created where Wink could have a 8-year plan to conquer the world, and he would do so and never think he couldn't because of race. That's the beauty of the 1970s. That's
okay, wait, I want to push back on you with what the prevailing narrative might be.
Go right ahead.
Mary, you might laugh about this. I think you'll probably recognize Wink is, my husband calls Wink a unicorn.
I'm a unicorn. There you go.
We like to call, you know, because, and I don't agree with that, but you know, that he's like got a very unique view. I think he's actually got a very, well, Wink, you and I found out and recently that your view is actually not that outside of mainstream for Black America in our recent new
Oh, okay.
alliances. I mean, well, at least let's say we're not alone. How's that?
Right.
We're not alone. You're not unique. We're all unique, but yeah. Okay.
Right.
Anyways, moving beyond beyond that, here's what I would say is I think what people would push back, the people who are in the predominant narrative now, the people who are, like you mentioned, the principal now of Thomas Dale, who is trying to form white affinity groups. What they would say is that, like, when schools were desegregated, it was done by legal order and not by a actual heart change or a mental change. And so therefore you had schools that were segregated, you had Black children bused to white schools, and then what you lost in the desegregation was that a lot of the Black teachers, they weren't bused, right? So I mean, Black kids went to schools that were white, but they didn't have anyone that represented them in a not authoritarian role, but an authority role, a teacher role or whatnot. And so some people would argue that desegregation for them, and I think this comes down to a personality issue, which I think you'll agree with me, but I'll let you kind of suss that out. But I think that a lot of people did not have the same experience as you did. I think a lot of people would argue that they went to a school where they didn't have the role models any longer. They didn't have the collaboration any longer. It doesn't sound like that's what happened to you. And I'm wondering, is it just that Thomas Dale was particular, or is it that you are particular in your unicorn way, or is it that the narrative is skewed?
I'll let Mary go for that first, and then I'll follow up.
Oh, great. Thanks, man.
Anytime.
Much love. Maybe Thomas Dale was a unicorn. Maybe Thomas Dale was a unicorn.
Good point.
That's hard for me to answer, Jen, because I don't know if we were skewed or not, but we all of our figures of authority didn't talk about race. We didn't talk about race in my house. We didn't talk about race at church. I never heard racial slurs with the circles I ran with. It just wasn't a focus then. And I don't know if people didn't talk about it intentionally. I mean, Wink, that'd be interesting to hear from you, the same perspective, but I would just say, I think maybe we were living more of a charmed life, but I'm happy we were, because we grew up thinking the world could be whatever we wanted it to be, and we could be whatever we wanted to be. And we never looked at racial discrimination or sexual discrimination. I mean, when I look back, I was discriminated against as a woman attorney, but you just didn't see things like that as an impediment to achieving your goals and your dreams. So I don't know, maybe we were unicorns, Wink, and maybe Thomas Dale was a unicorn. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think Thomas Dale deserves a movie or something like that. Who knows?
Hey, Wink, we can talk to Eli Steele about this.
Yes, that's true. Eli Steele might like that. So Mary raises great questions, and I can't address all of her points with appropriate thought. I'll just go on the surface. Was Thomas Dale a unicorn school, quote unquote? I think Thomas Dale was blessed, because if you think about it, we were in a fast-growing suburban county, which was blessed with increasing tax base, public resources. We were also blessed with a relatively low tax rate, and our schools were on the upswing. We were also blessed with a county where people had the deepest of deep roots. I mean, I was chuckling as Mary recalled her deep roots in the county. My roots are equally deep, if not more so. Let's see, my grandmother's grandfather purchased over 350 acres of land in Hickory Hill in Chesterfield County in the 1870s. And that became
Wow.
our ancestral hook in the county all these years. So when I came of age and when I went to school at Hickory Hill Elementary School, and then later at Salem Church in Thomasdale, I had a deep sense of myself. I had a deep sense of my roots. I wasn't someone whose mom or grandma had been in the Great Migration up north to Chicago or Detroit or Philadelphia. I was someone who literally could walk the same ground as my grandmother and my grandmother's father and my grandmother's grandfather. And that gives you a great sense of rootedness, a great sense of self. So I'm going to say, for those reasons, we were kind of blessed at Thomasdale because you probably had an unusually high number of kids who had the deepest of roots in the area. And so it was easier for us to feel that this school is our school, as opposed to, say, growing up in a city like New York City or Philadelphia, where you may not have similar roots. And so it's easier maybe to feel disaffection from the local public school. Just my thought and just my take. I've always thought personality matters too. I think we overlook the importance of personality when it comes to school achievement. I think you can be in a great school or an average school or a poor school. But if you are driven to achieve, if you are open-minded, if you're curious about the larger world, if you really can plot out a future, if you're goal-directed, if you have a deep respect for your ancestors, if part of your inner ethos is, I must achieve because I have more opportunity in life than my mother, I think those factors together might have more bearing on success in a school like Thomasdale High School than just race per se. And that's the sadness of it, Mary. When we just look at race alone, that's like a tiny sliver, like a tiny dimension of one's personality, one's makeup, one's character, one's constitution, one's disposition. Like I said, I came into high school on a mission, and race could go to heck. I was going to achieve my goals. It didn't really matter what other people thought or didn't think. And I just think that's kind of missing a lot nowadays. And maybe Thomasdale was a good crucible for that mindset in approaching life, approaching the world. So that's just my thought, Mary. Long answer to your question.
It's missing. Well, you already know it's missing. You started this whole conversation with Blackness is oppression, nothing else mattered. So race is no longer that tiny sliver, it's everything. And when everything is, hinged on that, it doesn't leave a lot of room to grow and to develop as an individual.
Well, think about it. If I had been in the fourth grade outside Dr. Lush's office off of Hull Street in Southside Richmond, and if some authority figure or teacher had said to me in the fourth grade, Winkfield Jr., Blackness is oppression, nothing else matters, would I have had the fortitude and the will and the courage and the disposition to draw up an 8-year plan for myself? I doubt it. I think I would have been more inclined to feel that the world is rigged against me, so why care, why try? And that's a horrible outcome for a little kid to have. Little kids need to feel that the world is their oyster. Little kids need to feel that your mission in life is to bring more love and joy and purpose and meaning into the lives of all of us. Your job as a kid is to feel your heart open as you learn about more people and different people unlike you every day at school. To me, that's the vision for a life well lived as a little kid. The world really is a blessing. We should be bringing more love and joy into the world. That's how I view it. That's what I did. That's what I do now. That's why I do what I do with Jen.
Yeah, that is what you do, why you do what you do.
So,
yeah.
Can I ask a question or two for Mary? Mary, what advice do you have for teenagers today at Thomasdale? We've kind of walked through memory lane together. I've enjoyed this so much, by the way. But what advice do you have for teenagers today at Thomasdale in the year 2022?
Well, I think, Wink, if we could impart on them something that we had, and you're right, it was sort of that charm life and that desire to achieve. My advice would be to see the world as your oyster, that it's huge. There's so much you can do, and just look at the fact that we were all young people. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I was poor. I had a job and no
Oh,
car. And
back groceries
so
at you crops, back boy,
there you
back in
go.
groceries. There you
There
go.
you go. But I think if we could tell them to see what they could achieve if they set their mind and open their eyes to more than one thing.
Mm.
Life is not social media. Life is not just race. Life is really, if they could look at things without a lens on it and see the world for what they could be without looking at race and sex. And I don't think sexism is a big deal anymore, not like it used to be, but it seems like you're right. Like that race filter has darkened so many kids' minds and attitudes. I would ask them to go back to thinking about what they were like in fourth grade and what they wanted in fourth grade, what they wanted to be, because I think they're under so much pressure now. And I would love to walk the halls of the school and look at it and see, is it more segregated now than it was when we were there? And if so, is that really what we had hoped, or what anyone had hoped to achieve with Black Lives Matter or anything that's been going on? That's what worries me, is that, like you said, you're such a wonderful person with a wonderful outlook in life. And to have a daughter say what she said to you, it must have been hard for you to hear that and wonder, why does she feel that way when you had so much joy and zest for life? And I just feel like it's a dark heaviness for people. And by dark, I certainly don't mean, I just mean, it's just, I wish they would see the world for what they can be and what they can do to help others. I do think social media has made people more self-indulgent and self-centered and less interested in what they can do for the world. You wouldn't have wanted to be president if you didn't think you could make the United States a better place. And I'm sure you thought you could, and I'm sure you could, and I would still vote for you if you run.
Thank you, Mary.
After
You
the
heard
book,
that, Jen.
yes, after the book releases, we will start the Wink for President
That's right.
campaign,
That's right.
Mary, and we'll bring you on as the treasurer.
Oh, great. I'd rather be a higher office though, Jim.
Oh my gosh, by all means, take it on. But I'm just laughing because that's how you and Wink knew, like you were the student body president or treasurer.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Right. I don't think women were really the president back then, but maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
Maybe it'll be Mary for president and Wink vice. You know, we can.
I don't want to be president. I'll just help Wink.
Thank you.
I'll be secretary. I would love. I'm cool with Secretary of State, Mary. Vice president.
That would be fun. No, I think we'll run against each other, Jim. No.
Oh, okay.
I'll do whatever Wink wants me to do to help.
There you go. Thank you, Mary.
Well, Wink, do you have any more walks down memory lane? This has been so fun for me. And like I said, Mary, we've been writing about this and writing about Wink's life. And he and I go back and forth a lot. You know, I grew up, even though my family is, well, let me clarify. I said Southern, but Texas does not consider itself Southern.
Okay.
There's Texas. So
it's an anomaly.
It's its own
anomaly.
place.
I like that word.
Yes.
Yeah, it's its own place. So my family background, although I lived all over the world, is from Texas. And I think it still has, I think it's a mixture of like Southern thought as well as, you know, its own thought, if you will. But Wink and I have gone, in our book, we go back and forth because he tells me about his experiences, as you guys have just done today in Thomasdale. And I push back sometimes because as someone who grew up not in the same experience as you two, I was immersed in a similar discourse, not quite as extreme, but as his daughter, where, you know, racism is everywhere. You've got to be on the lookout. Let's fight this. And of course, who doesn't want to fight racism, right? I mean, duh, that's like a given. But Wink will then push back and be like, but what does that look like? You know, he shares his life stories like today and says, like, this isn't, like, when you talk about racism the way we talk about racism today in today's current narrative, you are in essence diluting my life story. You are like not giving, there's this sense of lack of agency. And so to hear you guys speak is fascinating, but I wonder, like, again, let me just kind of push back again. Wink, is this story, I mean, all stories are unique. That's why we're individuals.
Right. Exactly.
That's why we're
right.
individuals. But
Exactly.
would you leave room for the fact that some other people might not have had the same charmed, as I think you and Mary said, charmed life?
Oh, sure. Yes. In fact, I mentioned this before, and I'll return to it. I wrote an honors thesis while at UVA about public school desegregation in Chesterfield County, Virginia, and I enjoyed it. It was great. And I interviewed a number of my family members who are Twymans in Chesterfield County. And it was interesting to me because there was a clear split in how family members navigated desegregation. So for example, myself, I just had a ball out of my high school experience. My cousin Bruce Twyman, he was one of the first Black students at Meadowbrook High School. I think he was under freedom of choice plan in 1966, 67. And I talk about how he got along fine with people, did well, and his parents thought that was because of his personality. He was very easygoing, got along with everyone. He wasn't the kind of kid that went looking for trouble. Now, juxtapose myself and my cousin Bruce, we're all Twymans, with my cousin Bob and my cousin Tony. Shout out to Tony. So cousin Bob, who grew up in Twyman Road like I did, and as Mary recalls, everyone who lived on Twyman Road was a Twyman, which gave you a real sense of uniqueness and roots. But Bob, Bruce's younger brother, he didn't choose to go to a formerly all-white school under freedom of choice. He resisted that, even up until the very day they closed the Black high school, which is Carver High School. And I think that's because his personality was different. He probably suspected or did not want to encounter misperceptions or assumptions about Black people or Black intelligence or whatever. So for him, it was probably more a matter of comfort, but it's a personality thing. And then finally, my wonderful cousin Tony, and I just find her to be such an interesting example of this. So my cousin Tony lived on Twyman Road, where everyone was a Twyman. And in 1969, 1970, the city of Richmond, which was 42% Black, was gaining more and more of a Black population. The city fathers in the city of Richmond decided to annex part of Chesterfield County to bring in more white voters to the city to dilute the Black voting base. But what's interesting is, in doing that, they annexed Hickory Hill, which is where Twyman Road was. So the irony, of course, is the city of Richmond is annexing Black people to dilute the Black vote in Richmond. Kind of ironic. So we all had to decide: are we going to stay in the county? Are we going to stay in the city or move out to the county? My parents decided to move out to the county, to Chester. Bruce and Bob's father, Robert Daniel Twyman, decided to move out to Midlothian. And the reason he said was, well, one, the schools are better. And two, he wasn't going to let his daughter be bused across town to Church Hill, where they didn't know anyone, because those were city people. We were county people. So what's interesting is, so the father relocates to Midlothian, and Mary knows Midlothian well. Midlothian probably had maybe, I'm thinking, was maybe 1%, 2% Black. And so Tony always felt a sense of alienation. She always felt a sense of being misunderstood. She craved to be around more Black people, and that just wasn't happening at Providence Junior High School or Midlothian High School. And so as fast as she could, she hightailed it to the city of Richmond after graduation from high school. But the point is, in one family, in one Twyman family, you had all of these individual responses and differences and reactions to desegregation. That's why I think it's personality. It really is. I was not Bruce, I was not Bob, and I was not Tony. Tony actually envies people who grew up in all Black schools because she would have felt more of a cultural alignment. I was aligned with nerds. My culture was geeks. My culture was student council titans of industry. That was me. That was just not Tony. Tony's a different person. And so we all love one another, Mary. We all are Twymans who grew up on Twyman Road. But I think that maybe it really is personality driven, how people responded to desegregation. And I don't think we really hear a lot about that it's a matter of personality and not so much other factors. But that's just me. But
I think
Mary,
you make a great point, Wink, because I think personality, and also we were not hypersensitive or directed in any way by social media or anything else
true.
to be hypersensitive
That's
to
true.
race being an issue. Because if you look at our yearbook, I don't know what the ratio of Blacks to whites were, but
Oh, I do. It was 8.5% Black.
okay, I would have said maybe 10 or 12%,
Okay.
but that's just thinking about it. I mean, not, and that's probably close to what the county was,
Yeah.
But I really do think people are so hyper focused on things now that
Mhm.
they don't allow themselves the bigger picture. And you did. And I don't know, maybe we're just blessed. Maybe we're both just blessed to have gone to Thomasdale High School and loved our years there. And it helped us both. Look, we're happy, healthy, successful people that, relatively speaking, you're definitely more successful, I'm sure, than I am. You're a book author.
No way.
But you know what I mean?
You flatter me, I know, yeah.
But we're just two people that grew up in a small area and went to a small high school and had dreams and hopes and never felt that race or anything else would not allow us to be successful. And it's a blessing. And I'm sure we had a lot to be sensitive about, but we just didn't. And we were focused on our dreams. And I think that's what I wish kids would focus on more than something that it's in your face all the time now. And it's unfortunate because I think with social media, everything is in your face.
I know.
And they don't have a chance to just think and dream anymore.
And it's all surface level, what's in your face is all surface level. I mean, what we're talking about here, personality, you actually have to sit with someone to know their dreams and we don't do that now. It's all based on what you see here, and we're doing a disservice to. I think that we've progressed in so many ways. I don't want to discount that. I don't want to say, oh, let's go back to the 70s, but in some ways, I think that in that way where we took people more for who they were than what they looked like, to the extent that that's what you guys did.
Yeah.
We're backsliding.
Now, Mary, this might intrigue you. Tomorrow, Jen and I have an interesting podcast because we're going to examine what happens when you just imagine things. I mean, what happens when there's racial silence and your imagination runs wild? So that's going to be kind of interesting. It goes to Jen's point. If you don't know someone, then you're vulnerable to all kinds of caricatures and stereotypes about people. You really are. Yeah.
And now that we focus so much, even though we're more integrated than even you guys were at the time at Thomasdale, now that we're so focused on these immutable external characteristics, we're more segregated. There's more, that's how it seems to me. I mean, there might be more Black students at Thomas Dale now than there were when you were there, but there's probably more separation than there was then. Because we're just
I think
focusing-
that's true. I really have, being here, I can say I think that's true.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Mhm.
And Mary, you sense that because of what you've seen at school activities or school events or
I would
school
say
functions,
we
or
more
what's your basis
from
for that?
the news
Okay.
and newspaper. I still read the newspaper. I'm
Good for
a
you.
dinosaur.
I like that. I like dinosaurs. Let's form a dinosaur caucus. I like that.
But I would say that, and then also just things I hear at the courthouse and
Mhm.
in circles. I think I think there's a larger Black population at Thomas Dale, but I think there's also more segregation at Thomas Dale than when we were there, which is so sad because we didn't have that.
Yeah. Do you think that the kids today at Thomas Dale are aware of our generation and what we did in the 1970s?
No, I really don't. For whatever reason, I'm sure they think we're just old geezers anyway, but I don't think they, I mean, I wish they could watch a video clip of walking down the halls at Thomas Dale or going in a classroom and seeing, lab partners that were Black and white sitting together or Asian and white sitting together, and how we just got along. We were in clubs together. We ran the student council together. We were officers together. I mean, Marva was, Marva and I were friends. I mean, we weren't best friends, but we were friends, and I always respected her. And
were you guys friends at Tech, Virginia Tech?
we saw each other. I think she ended up going to vet school. I'm not sure she went to vet school at Tech. Yeah, but she was always beautiful.
She was the homecoming queen at Tech.
Yes, and we get, excuse me for interrupting you, Mary,
Sure.
but just for our listeners, because we mentioned Marva before, Marva was also a Black woman you beat her out as the president, so she became the vice president, right, Week? Is that right?
No, she became like senior class vice president. Is that right, Mary? I think.
Yeah, let me look at the.
That was her consolation prize.
Or something.
You were treasurer, Mary.
Oh, I was treasurer. Okay.
But again, just to
she
show,
didn't have any money. I don't know what I was treasurer of. She was vice president. Scott Lee was president.
Yeah.
Okay. So just even to add more like richness to this story. So Wink, you were the president.
Yeah. And my vice president was James Friend, a Black kid who came from a long, strong Black.
He was
James?
great.
He was great. He was wonderful. He was.
Sweetest guy.
You bet. And in one of our earlier podcasts, I had mentioned there was a Black developer who built all of our homes. Remember that? That was James's grandfather.
Yeah.
James B. Friend Sr., I think. So just a great, solid family. The Friends were very well known throughout that part of the county. Yeah.
But so interesting. He was your friend. I mean, it was just so interesting that when we're talking about that, I mean, I know this is like nitty gritty, but back in the 70s, your student body council was truly integrated without thought or without question. I mean, it wasn't like now I feel like we might integrate a council just to be PC or just to be, not because it truly was, but because it's the right thing to do. And that's where I get frustrated.
Yeah. No, Marva and I we were duking it out for president. Yes. There was no, well, let's be nice and kind and make Marva or Wink. No. We were duking it.
Hey, what was your campaign? Was it "Don't be a dink, vote for Wink" or something like that?
No, it was no soggy French fries. No more soggy French fries, I think it was.
That's probably why you won, Wink.
Probably, yeah.
Because no one likes soggy French fries.
That's right. So,
but Jen, you make a great point. You are absolutely right. There was no intentionality to anything. It just happened, and we never thought about who, what, why, when, where. We were
Right.
just happy to work together and do it, and we were all friends.
Yeah, because now we'll look at a board, whether it's a school, literally from a school board to a corporate board, and be like, do we have the right proportion of this, amount? Do we have this, and it seems to me like it's kind of funny for a school that only had 8.5% Black students. You had more Black students representing student council, like you said, with no intentionality. And now it's like everything is like you're forcing things to fit. And I feel like if we just kind of let go and knew each other as people, and as like Wink says, as personalities, and as individuals outside of what we look like, we'd have so much more diversity.
Yeah, well, people, as Mary says, I mean, I was a unique personality. I raised my hand and spoke up. People knew me. And people loved James Friend. He was great guy. Marva, beautiful person. People love Marva. And don't forget Barry. Remember Barry West, sophomore class president? Yeah. So, and the thing, Mary, I don't think we were self-conscious about it, really. You know what I mean? No, I don't think so. So, like I said, kudos to Principal Crump, because he began his career in a segregationist time when schools were segregated by race. And at the end of his career, he had created that milieu, that ethos, where everyone could go out there and achieve, compete, make friends, where we created it wasn't a Black school, it wasn't a white school, we created a school. And that was something that was beautiful and was for the first time in our county. And so all kudos to Principal Crump. I say, Mary, all kudos, I think. Definitely.
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head, because you're right. His background, but I never even thought about it, Wink. That's what I mean. It just wasn't in our faces. Nothing was directed to us to be, to do as to race. It was just, it just happened. And like you said, I don't know who was talking about the affinity group at heart, where, I don't know if it was Jen or you, but it was like, that would never happen. I mean, no, it would never have happened to Thomas Dale. He would have thought that was ridiculous.
Until now, where it is happening at Thomas Dale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is foreign to you guys from what I'm hearing. You would go back and not even recognize.
Yeah. So I don't know. But so Jen, what happens when our generation passes away? I mean, what happens when you have a world where kids only know the way things are today? Does that make sense? What happens then? How can I put it? When I grew up, and I'm sure Mary was the same way, you always had a sense that you were living in the shadow of your ancestors, and that you were just the latest link in what their lives had put together. So for example, great-great-grandfather had acquired 300 acres of land, created a school, a church, a farm, and then his children inherited part of that. His grandchildren lived on the same land. Their children lived on Twyman Road. Their children also lived in the county. You just had a sense you were part of an upward swing in the momentum of history, of life. And I just feel like today, it seems sort of like kids are living in a decline as opposed to an upswing. Does that make sense? I see Mary shaking her head.
Yeah.
I think it's true. I mean, I think I can't wait to read the whole book. I mean, Jen, Wink let me read a little of it when he wanted me to look at his writing style. And of course, I knew it would be brilliant, and it was, but, and it was. I mean, but I do think you're absolutely right. People, I think that maybe it's just the happiness quotient that people are, people are just troubled, and they're not, I don't know. That's why I said, I don't remember people committing suicide.
No, not at all.
Being in a mental hospital.
No.
People had rough times, they really did, but it seems like we were more resilient perhaps
Yes.
to difficulties than kids are now. They're just not And I know parents are trying to raise them to be resilient, but hey, you know, you won, you were president, but if you'd lost, you wouldn't have ended up
right.
at Tucker's psychiatric ward because you lost the election. So
Right.
I think, I mean, I can remember like I wanted to go out with somebody and they didn't ask me and I was down in the dumps about it, but
Aw,
I got over it. Somebody
You
else
got
asked
over it.
me out and it made me
Yeah.
happy. So, you know, I think kids are just so now unable to look at the big picture and be happy about small things. And
that's
it's
gratitude.
sad.
That's
Well,
gratitude.
I think there is a lot. I think this world it's just too much. I think
Mm,
too much affluency,
mhm,
too much social media. The
mhm,
simple life we had is no longer the life that kids have.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you bring up something really, really important. I love the happiness quotient. You know, I mean, I haven't
Yes.
heard that for a while, but I think that you're right. And I think that one thing with social media, among many other things, is that has been degraded because you look on it and all you see I mean, of course you never post. I never post a picture when I look. People be like, oh, that's a beautiful picture. You look beautiful. I'm like, duh, because I put the most beautiful, like, I'm not going to put an ugly picture on, you know, I mean, like, of course, you know, I mean, not that, but it's crazy. Like when you see someone on social media, of course they pick the best picture, you know, and so people who aren't, you know, which we all get in the dumps. And when we use that as a measurement tool of where we are, how can you not lose part of that happiness quotient? You know, I mean, it's diminished exponentially with the way we interact today.
It's all alien to me, Jen. It really is. I mean, Mary, have you ventured into Twitter land? Is that something that you?
No.
Good.
Don't.
Good. See, she's smart. She's smart.
Yeah.
I like you even more, Mary.
I want to be happy. I don't
There you
venture
go.
into anything. Like it would make me unhappy. I try not to watch the news unless I have to.
Oh, I'm the same way, Mary. I'm the same way. I like to hear this. This is so good. I'm not the only one. Now, Mary, I will say this. When I was growing up in the 1970s, my mother felt the same way. My mother felt that there were too many news stories out there about negative things, you know, criminals breaking rules and laws and negative
Watergate,
stories.
Vietnam.
And so what happened was my mom and maybe my grandma too, my Uncle James Scott, they made sure that we really read news stories that were positive. I remember Black Enterprise magazine, which is a story of Black businesses, Ebony magazine, Jet magazine. And so whenever I received news about Black people, it was always positive and uplifting. You know, you're reading about, well, who's the major Black businessman in New York City? Or what are the top 100 Black businesses in the country? And so I learned to associate Blackness, quote unquote, with enterprise, with excellence, with achievement. And that was just my internal thing. It would never have occurred to me to equate Blackness with oppression, because I'm reading Black Enterprise magazine about people buying companies and starting law firms and investment banks. So it's kind of interesting that that was my way of understanding Blackness. Blackness is not oppression. It's, well, who's got the largest Black business in New York City? Who's got the largest Black law firm in the country? Who has the biggest Black bank in the country? So it's interesting, a different way of understanding Blackness. But here's a funny story for you, Mary. So we had a classmate. I won't mention his name. I want to, but I won't mention his name. I could, but I won't mention his name. 3 times I said that. But we're the classmate. And he was not the most liberal fella. I'll just say that he was from Augusta, Georgia. Mary may know who he is. And he used to rag on me all the time. He used to, talk about, how there wasn't that much going on in terms of Black achievement and Black enterprise. And so one day I decided, I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. So I saved up my hard-earned nickels and dimes from bagging groceries at U-Crops, and I carefully filled out a subscription form, and I sent him like a 1-year subscription to Black Enterprise magazine. So every month, The
Wait.
spell he received.
I've never heard that story before, by the way.
Mary knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure she
I
does.
don't know. Now I gotta go look at my yearbook. Does his name start with a C?
Not a C. We're
You'll have to email me later.
Okay.
That's hilarious. That's
And so what
hilarious.
happened?
So it was so delightful because he would. Well, he was a new man because he was learning forcibly every week, every month rather, about these Black titans of industry. He could no longer just dismiss Blacks as people who couldn't achieve anything, because every day, every week, every month in his home, Black Enterprise magazine is staring at him.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Well, Wink, it must have been from his parents that he felt that way when you think about it, because
Well, he was not from Chester. That's a little hint.
you
He
said
was not
that,
a
but his
native.
parents must have been, for him to feel that way, it was probably what he learned in his home. That's
sure.
how.
Yeah.
And but that's interesting, because that's like the only example I can think of, and you've given, of where you felt that somebody was disparaging to you or to Black people.
Oh yeah, him. He would be exhibit.
Yeah.
He would be Exhibit A. Yeah. And there's another gentleman, Exhibit B. Won't mention his name, but he was the same way. He just didn't see it. And what's funny is, and I'll give you a big hint, Mary, he was also a racial minority. Mary knows, because Thomas Steele wasn't that ethnically diverse. So Mary knows probably who I'm talking about.
I think I do.
You think you do.
Okay, but what's so fascinating and so funny is your response. Your response wasn't to go, cry victim. Your response was to send him Black Enterprise magazine.
Yeah.
I think Wink needs to do a podcast every day on how to just move forward with everything and not allow the fact that you're Black to make you feel oppressed, because you don't have to be oppressed. I mean, Wink would be great if you could just train young people. We might get back to the 70s, Wink.
There you go. Back to the 70s, right? Back
Thomas
to the future.
Dale. That's right. When we were young.
When we were young, I like that.
When we were young.
Because you were so optimistic, and I think we all were, generally speaking.
We were, yeah.
Much more optimistic than today's youth.
I agree, totally. And the miracle is, as I said before, we were so much closer to the real bad days. That's the thing. We were closer to the real bad days, and yet we had that optimism. So that's straight. Principal Crump, he needs his movie.
That's right. Tired of all this hugging and kissing in the hallways. I wasn't hugging and kissing in the hallways. I don't know about you, Wink.
I know Wink wasn't. Wink was in the library.
I wasn't. That was in the library. That's right. That's right.
I would have been hugging in the hallways.
I can't wait to read y'all's whole book. I hope it's as fun as this has been.
Yeah, I hope so. We're trying.
Yeah, well, and Mary, this has been speaking of, this has been so much fun. After you read it, maybe we should have this conversation again, because I think there's so much left to be said. I mean, I'm getting so much from your personal experiences and your stories. I'm laughing as well. So let's make a plan. When you get we'll send you an early copy.
Sounds good.
I love to read, so that would be great.
Oh, good.
I read, I printed a little bit of what Wink sent me, and the rest I read on the computer, but it's fascinating. Like, Jen, your story is fascinating too. The foreign country, getting stuck on the elevator or whatever happened. You were somewhere in a foreign country, I remember, and I said to Wink, I was like, wow, she's been everywhere, lived everywhere.
Right.
So it will be fascinating to read the whole book cover to cover.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that is what's unique, at least on my side. And I won't say too much, is I always had an outside in, well, not always, but often had an outside in view of America. And to me, it was beautiful until I came back and I was like, what the, like, was I just imagining stuff?
Mm,
You know? And I hear your stories. And I'm like, no, I wasn't imagining things.
mm,
I wasn't imagining things. So anyways.
Well, I wish you'd gone to high school with us. You would have had
Yes.
fun, and
a lot of fun.
it would have been a beautiful time for you too. And
That's right.
but y'all wouldn't have written the book.
Right,
And
that's right.
probably so.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
grateful for the time now.
It's been
Mm.
great to meet you. And Wink, for me, it was like just seeing you again, ever how many years ago it was.
That's right. That's right.
It's sort of like just seeing you in the hallway, and we're heading into class together, government or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
the time has just evaporated by even just speaking to you. It's
Oh, you
that's
warm
an
my heart.
interesting thing. Well, it really is. I think that's a sign of just a truth to our friendship and knowing one another, that we can feel like we're just back in the halls talking to each other on our way to class.
Well said. Well said. And I hope if we can in some way through this bring more joy and love into the world, that's a good thing.
I
That's
hope
a good
so.
thing.
That's a beautiful thing.